Mongolia is truly enormous. If it were in Europe, it would stretch from the French Atlantic coast right over to Moldova. Yet, this vast nation has a population smaller than Madrid. It's the most sparsely populated sovereign nation on Earth, with only a little over 2 people per square kilometer. But here's the paradox: Mongolia isn't just empty, it also has areas suffering from overcrowding. Nearly half the population now lives in a single city. A city that spends months each year choking in toxic smog. A city ringed by sprawling settlements, which have limited access to running water and proper sewage systems. So, how did one of the world's emptiest countries come to have one of the most overcrowded cities? To understand, we need to know that Mongolia's small population has been shaped by its geography. Landlocked between Russia and China, it's 1,000 kilometers from any ocean and sits at an average elevation of over 1,500 meters. This creates one of the most extreme climates on the planet. The Siberian anticyclone dominates winter, a massive blob of intensely cold air that settles over the region for months. The city of Ulaanbaatar is one of the coldest capitals on the planet. In January, it averages at minus 20 degrees Celsius. Across the countryside, regularly minus 30 and below. But cold alone doesn't explain the low population density. Canada is cold, Russia is cold, both support far larger populations. The real barrier? The land itself. Only around 1% of Mongolia is arable. 1%. That's among the lowest figures globally, and the single most important factor prohibiting population growth across the country, both historically and now. The growing season is brutally short. Soil quality is poor. Rainfall is unpredictable. Farming here is a high-risk, low-yield gamble that rarely pays off. Instead, more than 2/3 of the country is steppe. Vast grassy plains which are used for grazing livestock but poor for growing crops. In the south, it becomes even more challenging, with the Gobi Desert covering a swathe of land up to the border of China, one of the toughest environments on Earth. Then there's water scarcity. Many rivers are highly seasonal, dwindling to trickles in summer, freezing solid in winter, then swelling again in spring when the snow melts. Climate change has accelerated this dramatically. In recent decades, more than 1,000 water sources, including streams, rivers, springs, and lakes, have dried up. These aren't minor inconveniences, they're complete barriers to human habitation over large parts of the country. It created a landscape that couldn't be farmed, a landscape demanding constant movement to survive, and that has shaped everything which followed. The people who survived here didn't fight the environment, they adapted to it completely. Nomadic pastoralism, following herds of sheep, goats, cattle, horses, and camels, moving with the seasons in constant search of fresh pasture and water. The lifestyle demands enormous land to support very few people. The traditional Mongolian home, the ger, embodies this perfectly. Circular, felt-covered, light enough to transport, strong enough to withstand ferocious winds. It can be packed up in hours and reassembled just as quickly. Not a home for a place, a home for a journey. This culture valued mobility, resilience, and communal land access, rather than private property and permanent settlement. The latter create the very foundations of dense cities. Now, here's what most people get wrong about the Mongol Empire. At its height in the 13th century, controlling the largest continuous land empire in history, the Mongolian heartland had fewer than 1 million people. The capital, Karakorum, was a modest city by empire standards, a testament to how mobility and strategy, not urban concentration, defined Mongol power. The empire's success wasn't sheer numbers, it was superior strategy, discipline, and horsemanship from nomadic warriors. For centuries after the empire's fall, Mongolia's population remained small, a stable equilibrium with a harsh environment, sustainable but sparse. That equilibrium shattered in the 20th century. The Soviets brought modern medicine, improved sanitation, and state-managed food supplies. they also brought a different way of life, one which focused on urban development over traditional nomadism. Mongolia's population more than doubled in 50 years, but they introduced something that would change everything: centralization. The Soviets actively discouraged nomadic life, pushing people into settled collectives. They poured investment into building up Ulaanbaatar and creating industrial cities like Darkhan and Erdenet from scratch. The country is rich in natural resources, with large deposits of copper, coal, and iron, along with gold and, more recently, rare earth materials. The Soviets created mining towns, with urban centers around them, to house workers and fuel the USSR's demand. All roads led to these urban centers, all railways, all power lines, all opportunities. This created a gravitational pull that would become irresistible in the modern era. And that brings us to the crisis happening right now. Today, ancient geography and Soviet planning are colliding with modern economics. The result? A nation simultaneously depopulating its countryside while also dangerously overcrowding its capital. Mongolia's economy rests on two completely different pillars. First, a high-tech mining industry generating immense wealth for a few. The same large deposits the Soviet began to extract play an important role in Mongolia's modern-day economy. Mining accounts for up to 30% of GDP and more than 80% of exports annually. The Oyu Tolgoi copper mine alone contributes roughly 30% of the country's GDP, yet employs only around 20,000 people. Modern mining is an industry of massive machines, not massive workforces. Immense profits in isolated locations, which few reap the rewards from. Modern mining doesn't provide widespread employment and financial uplifts. Instead, around 73,000 people are officially employed across Mongolia's mining sector, yet it makes up for a third of the whole economy. Historically, larger workforces were needed to extract raw minerals. Now, high-tech machines do a lot of the work, with fewer people. The second backbone of Mongolia's workforce? Traditional herding, one that has played a key role in rural Mongolia throughout history, and it's facing an existential crisis. Climate change is hitting Mongolia harder than almost anywhere else. Average temperatures are rising at more than twice the global average, and the swings between winter and summer are becoming more aggressive and devastating. This has dramatically increased the frequency of zuds. A zud occurs when intense summer drought leaves animals weak and grass thin, which is followed by an incredibly harsh, snowy winter. The snow freezes into thick ice over the grasslands, preventing animals from reaching it beneath. In 2024, more than 7 million animals died in a particularly severe zud, destroying livelihoods and leaving families with tough choices to make about their futures. These intense weather changes led to economic wipeouts, driving families from the countryside. The result? Mass relocation on an unprecedented scale. It's an issue expected to get worse as climate change continues to take hold and more people struggle to survive in the countryside. In 1950, only 20% of Mongolians lived in urban areas. Today, nearly 70%, and almost all of them are moving to one place, Ulaanbaatar. In a country of 3.5 million people, nearly half now live in this single city. But many aren't moving into modern apartment blocks. The formal city can't cope with this influx. Instead, migration created the Ger districts, vast unplanned settlements of traditional Gers and self-built houses encircling the capital. Around 60% of Ulaanbaatar's residents live in these sprawling areas. Many lack basic amenities and services, limited paved roads, running water, sanitation facilities, or reliable sources of heating. And then there's the air. To survive brutal winters, Ger residents burn raw coal and wood in simple stoves. Smoke from hundreds of thousands of homes gets trapped over the city, creating some of the worst air quality readings on the earth. It creates a thick, toxic smog blanketing the city for months. During winter, Ulaanbaatar's air quality is regularly far above the World Health Organization's safe limit. In January 2024, it was 14 times worse than the amount deemed okay for human habitation. A public health crisis has emerged with increasing numbers of people suffering respiratory diseases, especially among young children. The cruel irony, people move to the city seeking better lives for their families, only to find themselves breathing poison. Mongolia has more land per person than almost any nation, vast wilderness stretching to the horizon, but its people are being forced by economic pressures and climate change into a dangerously overcrowded, polluted city. Nomadic historic ways of life are being tested to their limits in new urban settings. However, work is being done to try and preserve the country's traditions and reconnect people with the countryside, at least for parts of the year. Tourism is a major driver. The government is investing large sums of money to attract international visitors. Part of the charm is Mongolia's large, pristine wildernesses, along with the rich cultural traditions in nomadism. Experiences where visitors stay in traditional Ger communities, go horse riding, hiking, and spend time with herders is becoming popular. This is helping to protect nomadic culture to an extent and help forge new relationships with it for younger Mongolians. However, the challenges still remain. Climate change is continuing to worsen, and all-year-round settlement in large parts of Mongolia is becoming near impossible. The continual draw to the capital continues. The government's Vision 2050 aims to increase population and promote balanced regional development through secondary cities and development hubs. But these plans conflict with reality on the ground. Without a massive and coordinated strategy to create climate-resilient jobs and build modern infrastructure in regional centers, any population growth will inevitably funnel into Ulaanbaatar's already overburdened Ger districts. And climate change is the accelerator. Mongolia's story is a powerful lesson for the 21st century. It shows how a stable equilibrium between culture and harsh environment maintained successfully for thousands of years can break in just a few generations. The country's historically low density isn't a failure. For millennia, it was a success, a sustainable adaptation to extreme geography. The real danger? Modern overcrowding, a crisis born from climate, culture, and capitalism colliding. The future of Mongolia will be decided not in its vast steppes, but in the polluted Ger district of its capital. The question is no longer whether the land can support more people, it's whether the nation can find a new, sustainable, balanced way to live on it. Because, right now, Mongolia has all the land in the world, and increasingly unlivable urban conditions.